The Spanish Netflix original movie, The Paramedic, or El Practicante, gives us a main character who is really hard to identify with. So how does that affect the watchability of the movie? Angel is a paramedic who is hurt in a terrible accident. His mental state and his life begin to deteriorate, and then he becomes more and more suspicious of his girlfriend, Vane. Now, Angel is not really a character that we can be easily sympathetic towards. He's not a nice guy, and despite him being a paramedic, he really lacks compassion. After the accident, he becomes worse, and that's understandable because his life is now in a new situation, and so there's going to be frustration as just learning to do new things or even just dealing with recovery. But he also then takes a darker turn. Where he was already a little paranoid and a little kind of sketchy there, he becomes even more so. And that leads to him becoming very obsessive and then even sinister. Mario Casas as Angel does a really good job. We're not meant to like the character, and I don't at all. I really find him pretty repulsive as a human being, despite the challenges that he's going through. There are times when Casas has to do some pretty convincing things with his body and his movements, and he pulls them off really well. I mean, to me, it was really believable. And in those instances, I began to feel a little bit of compassion towards him, a little bit of sympathy. And then he would do an action that would just completely remove any feeling of sympathy that I had towards him. Now, I would not call Angel a static character. There's no positive growth in this, but there is growth. He's just going in the wrong direction. The tone of this movie is pretty dark, and it's fairly depressing as well. And that's because we see the trajectory that Angel's life is taking, and we can pretty much guess where his decisions are going to lead him. The personal interactions in this are painful, they're awkward, and uncomfortable. And Angel doesn't do anything to help those get better. Really, the plot of this story is the dismantling of an already flawed man. We watch somebody with internal demons go through a tragedy, and then when met with that adversity, they can either rise up through it and try and succeed, or they can just sink lower and lower into it. And when you do that, you go down that rabbit hole of despair. Some of the shots in this and the framing that they used is just absolutely beautiful to look at. And I love how they use some of the angles to really create a sense of unease in us. There's a portion of this film that reminded me a little bit of Boxing Helena. I mean, that's a very dark and twisted movie. This one is not so dark and twisted, but it's still, there were moments where I kind of got that vibe. Now, while a lot of the drama in this is slower moving and it's building, I mean, it is a constant upward trajectory of just intensity and just kind of, what's going on? But I gotta say, that last act, the intensity, the urgency, just the anxiety all ramps up even more so. There's also a very intense, if not brief, action scene, which I was drawn to. I mean, I was like, oh, whoa, okay. And then even in it, it was predictable. I knew where it was going, but I didn't care because in that moment, there was a little bit of yes. There are some weird time jumps in this film. One time, they give us a vague description, like many months later. I don't know how many is many, but at least we know that it's months. The other times, the screen just goes to black and then it comes back. And is it a day, a week, a month, even a year? Did you see what I did there? We know it's not a year just because of some of the physical attributes of some of the characters. When you watch it, it makes sense. I'm not trying to give anything away in that. But in some senses, it was cool because we didn't need to see all of this process. We just get to see the aftermath. And it made sense and it worked. And the time where it jumped was unimportant. The length of time didn't really matter. And then other times, it would be kind of nice just to know how long are we talking here? Not the many months later, just fade to black, come back, and we're in a different situation. If you want to watch a character spiral down into suspicion and dreariness, then you might get some enjoyment out of this. If, though, on the other hand, you are looking for something positive and upbeat and feel good, you're going to want to steer totally clear of this movie. Overall, it's a decent watch, but not something I'd revisit. Even though it's dark and gritty, that's not why I wouldn't watch it again. It was just really the character of Angel. I did not like him, and I'm not supposed to like him, but I don't want to subject myself again to that character. And it's not even like a bad guy character like I think of maybe Anton Chigurh, who is just a bad guy. And I mean, he is ruthless, but I want to see more of him, and I want to continue to watch him do his bad deeds over and over again. In this, I just didn't want to be in contact with Angel anymore. And I think that speaks to Mario Casas' ability to pull off a really and utterly despicable character. So he did a phenomenal job in pulling that off and creating somebody that is so repulsive, and yet I still continue to watch him when he's on the screen because I've got to see what bad decision he's going to make or where he's going to lead us next. And then, am I going to like it? Am I going to be more horrified? Is it going to get absolutely insane? Or is it just going to be a satisfying end to the film? There is sex, nudity, profanity, and a lot of violence. I give The Paramedic 3.5 out of 5 couches. What's a dark movie that you've seen recently that you enjoyed? I just watched The Devil All the Time on Netflix, and I had a blast with it, but I would love to know one of yours that you've seen in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for catching with me.